Hi, Carl.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're going to have to pronounce your name real quick so everyone can get it.
Yeah, it's Novakovich.
Novakovich. Oh, I would have like dumbed it, Americanized it down.
Everyone does.
No,
Everyone.
Novakovich.
Yeah, a lot of people go with that. Some people just drop letters off. It's usually the process.
So say it one more time for me.
Novakovich.
Novakovich. I can get it. That's
You know,
great. Yeah.
even with a complicated name, sometimes I mess it up.
Well, so my real name is Polish, and we were at a food truck the other day, and it was a Polish brat food truck, and the guy was from Poland, and he could actually say our name, like the BRZ, which is supposed to be a BRJ type
Oh,
pronunciation. He could actually say it the way like they said it in Poland, and we still can't do it. So anyway, that's just a little side note, though. Yeah, but I think you said your name was Serbian, correct?
yes, it's Serbian. Serbian.
Very cool. So we'll just jump right into books and authors
Sure.
and writing. Tell us about your book. I read it, so I love it, but I'm not going to give too many spoilers away. I want you to, and then I'll give my take on it after you give your take on it. How about
Sure,
that?
sure. Well, it's a fantasy series. This is the Tomb. The Watchers of the Tomb is the first part of what will eventually be seven total books. It's uh, kind of a take on what we're going through in today's world. Um, the Watchers is a collective of fallen angels that work on behalf of hell, trying to break the seven seals of Revelation. um, it will set free just immense evil on the world, just an apocalyptic wasteland. There are two people who can try to stop this from happening. One is a former detective in Chicago and from the Chicago Police Department, John Gideon. The other is a rogue demon who was able to break free from hell, Beth May. Um, and they team up to try to stop everything from happening. Um, now, the story is fantasy, right? That's what it is. But the deeper meaning of the story is trying to show you that everything in today's world can be made sense of by something deeper. That's what I wanted to try to do. I started writing this at the beginning of the pandemic. And we saw so much craziness. I mean, this is a once in a lifetime pandemic. We were seeing not only that, but so much social injustice. This was also right at the beginning. When I started writing, it was right after George Floyd was murdered in the streets. So I wanted to put something together that helped me make sense of everything. And as writers, we have a voice. I'm just one person. So I thought with my voice, I can try to help kind of make sense of something that I was seeing. So I did it in a way that I knew I can do it. I love fantasy, so I wrote it all down. And I created this crazy storyline. And with that came this wild series. And it's just a way of heroes trying to fight back against something that is a little too crazy for us to understand.
I love that backstory. That you're right. Now, so I'm a weird person. If somebody tells me to read a book or somebody offers me a book, I don't read like the back cover or the blurb. I just start reading the book. So usually I have no idea what they're about, what the characters or anything. So I just go in reading the book with no knowledge whatsoever. So coming from that, and this is like the opposite of yeah, so I met John, who's a police officer in Chicago, and he has a partner who's the partner goes missing, just as his father did, correct?
Well, so
Or
his
his
father
mother.
was never really in the picture. So that's
Okay.
the story. So his father's never really in the picture, but his mother
His,
goes missing.
okay, his mother went missing, right? So, and then his partner goes missing, and we don't really know why. And then it kind of jumps to 3 years later, and John has become his own PI, trying to find his partner. And we know, and it's written from third person, so we see a couple of other characters. And then I had no idea where the story was going, but I loved it. It was like a cross between. Have you seen iZombie on the
Yeah,
CW? Okay,
yeah.
so I never watched a zombie show before, but I like that one. So it's sort of that detective work, iZombie, supernatural. Yeah. So how did you come up with the idea for doing these seven? I mean, and definitely the last 2 years, I feel like we have lived through something that has felt apocalyptic. And is that how what made you think of these revelations? And
Yeah, so I'm not a religious person, and that's not why I did it. But when you think of the story of Revelation, there's sickness and war and death and all of that, and I figured that was kind of the best story to bring to fantasy, and with fantasy comes that kind of biblical storyline oftentimes. So that's kind of why I put that together. When I was originally thinking of what I wanted to write, I was coming up with this idea, what would work best. So for a while, I'm thinking, okay, well, I could do it this way, or I could do it that way, and then one day it just kind of clicked. The Revelation story would work. These fallen angels coming to, into the picture, and in actual biblical texts, there are the Watchers who fall from grace and become these fallen angels, kind of terrorizing things. And I did a lot of research on how this would work, and a lot of things in the story actually correlate to biblical text, and a lot of places in the story are actual places in Chicago. I'm from Chicago, so I make sure to have points in the storyline, and specifically in the second book that's going to be coming out soon, are real places in the city that you can find, streets that meet, the real places. I want to make it as real as possible, so it seems as if it's something that, as crazy as it is, maybe behind the scenes this can be happening. And that's why the way the story is written, it's there's a third person narrating some of the story, but it's also from the perspective of the actual characters. There's chapters labeled out, Beth or John, and it's from their point of view in that exact moment in time, and they're telling you, this is what I'm feeling right this very second. Because while reading it, it's not just a story, it's, to them, it's real life, and that's what I wanted it to be, as real as possible.
I think you did a great job of that. Yeah, I liked John's perspective and Beth's perspective, and then the third person over there going, okay, well, this is another little tidbit for you guys. So I
Thank you.
think you did a great job of that. And yeah, it was obvious that, a lot of research. That was going to be my next question. How much research did you do for this? So obviously a lot.
Thank you.
That's very cool. Yeah, I kind of write the same way, that urban fantasy, like trying to make it as real as possible, but then the fantasy part being like there's a countercultural or
Right.
underworld that the humans don't know about.
Mm.
And I also kind of bring those biblical references in too in my series. So that's very cool. It relates back to something I think a lot of people already know or know something about. So that also gives it that element of this may be real, right?
Right. Exactly. And that's exactly what I was going for. But then also, I mean, I'm assuming you noticed from while reading it, I didn't want it to just be this dark and dreary kind of thing where, where we're going through this dark time and you're reading this dark book. So I threw in little tidbits of humor or fourth wall breaking to take you out of the story every now and then, because I wanted it to seem like you're having a conversation with the character, or they're just having a normal conversation with each other, to seem like it's just real life.
I think you did a great job. Yeah, I love the book.
Thank you.
Okay, so you wrote the book during the pandemic. So tell me, not everyone would just say, okay, it's a pandemic, I'm going to start writing a book. Did you have any experience writing before that? Had you been a writer? Like, what is your background?
Yeah, so I mean, I never published anything before this, but I always wrote before this. So in high school, I would write stuff, little things here and there. But it wasn't until the pandemic that I really had the time to do it. Um, but I always enjoyed writing. Uh, it was, something I was very fond of, whether it be little skits that I would just come up with because I was bored, or I took theater classes in high school and creative writing classes in high school, but I was never actually like classically trained, if you want to put it that way. I didn't go to college for creative writing. But yeah, I did write prior to this.
So you liked writing. So
Yeah.
that's a big part of it, I think. I don't think if you don't like writing, then it would be really hard. And maybe you wouldn't have leaned toward that anyway, right?
Right.
You would have recorded it on a podcast or something.
Right. Yeah, no, it was
Very
definitely
cool.
definitely something I enjoyed prior.
Neat. And what authors inspired you, or what maybe movies, television? Do you have something that inspired you as a style?
Well, for me, when I was a kid, I wouldn't even really say an author inspired me. The reason why I started writing before, when I was younger, was I used to watch a lot of Mel Brooks movies, with my parents and my grandparents. And when I was a kid, I loved those Mel Brooks movies. I mean, I would quote them like crazy. And I used to want to write movies or TV shows. And that's what I would write. I would write these little skits or try to write up a script. And because those little one-liners that we would quote over and over and over again, I mean, I could still probably quote every single movie that he has
Wow.
verbatim. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have something like that, those classic one-liners that he has. So that's kind of what inspired me to start writing. And in fact, the Watcher series, what I originally wrote it as was a TV series. Then I turned it into a book series. But that's how I originally wrote it. And that's kind of what got me going when I was younger, was those Mel Brooks movies. So he's kind of the inspiration for me, was why I wanted to start writing.
Very cool. And so do you think you'll go back to that script writing?
Yeah, I mean, I still definitely write some. I have a few comedies that I've written. It's hard to publish those, or to pitch those out as an unrepped writer. I work with a small publishing company now. They're an independent publisher who publishes the books that I have, the series that I have. But without an actual agent, pitching a script is nearly impossible in this industry. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is actually turn one of the scripts into a podcast, a full cast podcast. It's in the very early stages, but we are trying to do that. But yeah, I definitely want to keep trying. I have a bunch of ideas that flow through my head every now and then. Something will just pop in my mind. I write it down in my notes app on my phone that I'll eventually get to. But the book series is the most important thing right now. So I maintain that momentum. So I'm on the third book of the series. So I want to make sure I keep that going first. But yeah, I always like the idea of script writing. So I will eventually get back to more of that in the future.
Very cool. So yeah, the first book is out. It came out in September, correct?
Mhm.
The Watchers, it's called The Tomb, and the second book is coming out soon. Is that right?
Yes, so that will definitely be out before the end of the year. It's in edits with the publisher now. It should be out at the very latest by mid-December.
Very cool. And what is
At the
the
very
title
latest.
on that book?
That's going to be The Watchers, The Horsemen.
The Horseman. Okay,
Yeah.
like the horseman from, yeah. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I got that right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually know another person who's a script writer as well. How is it different writing a script from writing a novel?
Well, it depends on what you're writing. If you're writing a TV show or if you're writing a movie. And if you're writing a TV show, it depends on if you're writing a 30-minute or an hour-long script. The page count really is important, because the pages matter for how long it's going to be. For time wise, the action scenes, like the sequences are matter very importantly, but also it's the dialogue is really important too, because when you're writing in a novel, a lot of the the detail you can just narrate, but with this, when writing a script, you leave a lot of it to what you would assume the actor would do, so you don't have to write out much of it. It's okay, you let the actor have the liberties on that one, unless it's really important, okay, they need to do this specifically, then you have to write it in. But it's relatively, I mean, I don't want to say easy, but in a way it's almost easier to leave certain things alone. So at certain times, writing out a specific scene is easier than having to do it in a book. So when I was, say, with the Watchers, when I was transferring certain scenes over from the script to the book, I would think, okay, well, I was going to leave this in my mind to the actor, but now I have to figure out exactly what I want to do. So like a fight scene with the Watchers series that I wanted to leave alone, writing that out, a fight scene was a lot more difficult. Took me quite a while to figure out how to actually write out a fight scene. I feel like I got the hang of it, but I figured it out a little bit better in book 2, I feel.
Oh, okay,
So
interesting. Yeah, I would probably Google it and say, how do you
yeah,
write a fight
a
scene?
lot of Googling for the fight scenes.
Yeah, my first book I wrote, when I handed it to my editor, she said, how did you write this? And I was like, well, I wrote it like I saw it in my head.
Yeah.
So it was like 180,000 words long, and it was mostly dialogue. I mean, I had descriptions in there, but it was a lot of dialogue because I just wrote it like I was watching the movie in my head, and I was
Right.
writing what I was watching in my head. And so that ended up actually being my first 2 books. But she was like, okay, we got to take 2/3 of this dialogue out of here, and like just summarize the dialogue, even if it's first person, just summarize this whole 5 pages of conversation, because you can't sit through that. So yeah, my writing has definitely evolved. So yeah.
Yeah, it definitely gets a little complicated when you're first starting out. Yeah.
And you said you have 7 planned. Do you know like what's going to happen in each novel already and where you're going? That's amazing.
Yes, I know how it's going to end. I know roughly how I'm going to get there, but I will say that actually going through each book, for the most part, I'm winging it. Because I don't like to set an exact timeline or goal, because then I realize, each chapter I'm like, well, I prefer it actually this way, or maybe I should do it this way. Because then while I'm writing it out, I think of something else that might fit, or a different twist that I want to change. So that's why I like to leave a lot of it actually open a little bit. So,
Very cool. Yeah,
but
at
I
least
know
room
how it's
for
going to end.
creativity in there. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because in one of my series, I had this bad guy. He was supposed to be the antagonist villain person, and he was so much in the book, and he was so much in my head that I just couldn't leave him the bad guy, because he was pretending to be a good guy. So he was pretending to be nice this whole time, and then in the end, I couldn't actually make him a bad guy. And then he ended up getting his own book in the series, like it was going to be a trilogy. And then the 3rd book, I let him have his own book, and then I went kind of. It stayed in the storyline, but yeah, he ended up like totally taking me out of, not off left field, but yeah, I didn't have the heart to make him a villain. So
you end up falling in love with the characters.
I know, it's this other world in your head, right? So what do you do when you get blocked?
I actually I just kind of take a break. Sorry, my dog is kind of walking around here, if you can hear it clicking. I'll just take a break. I'll put on the TV and just watch something, or I actually drive for Uber, and I'll get out and I'll just drive around the city. just to kind of see the city that, I'm writing about, just to get an idea. But just get away from it for a minute. I don't like to think about the fact that I'm blocked. Um, you know, I did that in the beginning where I was writing about it and I'd get in my head, and that would then go days and be focused on it. Why can't I think of anything? So I would just shut that out of my mind. It's not a big deal. It happens. And then I figured out, well, okay, I'll be fine in a day or two.
Well, I thought your book was really creative because I haven't read anything similar to it. And I love those when you find those that are like, oh, this is completely new and I haven't read anything like it. So it's
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So I have one big question I always ask my authors, and you're maybe a little bit prepared for it, but maybe your answer is different. Of what do you want your readers to come away from when they're reading your books? What is the one thing you want them to feel or get or experience?
Well, like I said, the main thing that this is about, not the fantasy, but the deeper meaning of this is what we're all going through. No matter who you are, you're going through everything in the world, right? By this point now, it's been almost 2 years into this pandemic. We've all known somebody who's been affected by it. By this point in the world, you've all known somebody who's faced some kind of social injustice. Not 2 years, but years. You've known somebody, whether it's you or somebody in your family, whoever. So again, it goes back to I'm just trying to use my voice to get that message out there. We live in an extremely divided world. So I'm hoping that this book can just show that deeper meaning and eventually showcase that we're all going through it together. And it doesn't need to be divided. And that's all I want to do, is just try to make sense of a crazy world.
That's very cool. I like that. Because I think, it's hard to think about the fact that, I was talking to someone who was older the other day, and he said, well, if you study all the huge pandemics, the first one, I think it was the Spanish, way back, like the Black Plague, the Renaissance came out of that, and how wonderful that was, right? And then the Spanish influenza, World War I, right? I was like, that's not so good. We only got a 50-50 shot here. So I hopefully we can go into that Renaissance, maybe higher version of the human experience where we can all see each other as humans.
Right.
That would be a good outcome.
We just got to bridge that gap and figure out a way to connect again.
That's awesome. Actually, it's cool that you talk about driving around Chicago. I love Chicago. I've been there several times. But my first series, it's a college romance series, was based at Northwestern in Evanston. So
okay,
I did a lot of research for that one as well. But
cool. Yeah, Chicago's a really cool town.
It is
city, I guess.
It's great to visit.
Yeah,
it's so cold absolutely. In the winter time. I don't think I can live.
Definitely cold. Yeah, I grew up here, lived here all my life. I still am not used to the cold.
Oh, yeah. My mother-in-law always says the wind that's so bad there, the cold wind. So.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here today. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, all my listeners get to know about the Tomb and the Watchers series. Tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, you could find it on Amazon. You can Google my name. You can Google the Watchers series, Watchers of the Tomb. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram. I have a link in both. And keep an eye on both my social media accounts, and I will post a link when the new book is up.
Yeah, we'll look for that new release, definitely. Thank you for being here, and we'll have definitely all your links in the description on the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much, Carl. Bye.